So, thank you for joining our first panel today, and it's a pleasure to see you here. And let me introduce our panelists today. It's a pretty cool list, and I think today we will try to cover your questions and the visibility of what is happening in digital transformation in banks. So let me go one by one, and let's start with the Jeremy Takle from Pennyworth. So you can introduce yourself, and then we will go one by one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Igor. So my name is Jeremy Takle. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pennyworth, which is a wealth tech app. We are focused on trying to close the advice gap here in the UK using AI. My background is I left Barclays after 25 years since 2019, mostly building banks around the world, building other types of mass affluent businesses across the globe.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Mariya Brown from BNY Mellon Pershing.
Thank you. Mariya Brown, work at Bank of New York Pershing. I started my career as a developer, then moved into user experience and then product management, and have been a product manager one form or another for nearly 20 years. I work, my title has innovation in it, but I really work on the transformation program. I initially joined the bank to get the innovation in the MAE program up and running, and then moved into Pershing. And for those of you who don't know, so Bank of New York is one of the biggest custodians. So it's custody, books and records, back office activities. Most of our clients are institutions, but within Pershing, our main clients are wealth managers. So we serve the wealth industry.
Okay, thank you, Mariya. And Andrew James Murray from Citi.
So Andrew Murray, so strategic investments for Citigroup, managing a portfolio of market infrastructure and financial technology companies that are strategically aligned to our businesses. So these are companies that we invest in to help partner, adopt, accelerate whatever their underlying product is as part of our broader innovation agenda. So I've been in the investing space, or strategic investing space, for around 15 years now. Firstly for Barclays Capital, then Deutsche Bank, and then for Citigroup for the last 7 years.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And in this case, let's start with the definitions, because a lot of buzzwords are flowing around, and let's make sure that we're on the same page. And the first question to everyone is, what is your understanding the difference between AI and ML? Because a lot of things are circulating around those topics, like AI is coming and changing the landscape and how we use the software and digital products. So Jeremy, maybe with you, what is the vision for you between AI and ML?
Yeah, I guess it's a great question. I mean, I think that what's fundamentally changed is we've been using machine learning in banking for many years. Many of you will have been deploying models to essentially use cases like fraud, marketing, customer services, and using pretty much various forms of predictive models using, again, brute force rather than just straight algorithms. So that's not new as such. What of course has happened with the sort of new frontier models post-transformer is that we've suddenly got a whole new understanding of what we can use large language models for. I think the key difference is that's all now probably better described as AI than perhaps it was before. It's still not really intelligence in the truest form, but what it has fundamentally done is created a new platform for business models, not least financial services business models.
Okay, sounds great. Mariya, what is your vision?
Yes, I suspect a lot of panels will be on this topic, and I'm sure there is a proper technical definition of the differences. And yes, I agree, machine learning has been around for a long time, applied to various use cases. A lot of those have been around automation. And AI, yes, it's a big word. I've been trying to find examples of good use cases, and beyond the obvious sort of ChatGPT, and the one use case that I'm working on now is that we have a problem where we're transforming data from one data model to another, and AI actually proved to be a very useful tool because it can predict missing data or suggest what the values might be and sort via an interface say, right, we think this should be done, do you agree or not? So it's sort of useful for that. Within the bank, we do have, about half a year ago, we've built an internal AI platform, so everybody within the bank can use it, given some training, obviously, and to their advantage. We're very cautious about releasing any functionality to the end users because of various risks involved. But internally, a lot of people are using the technology.
Okay, thank you. And your vision, then?
Yeah, as you can imagine, we get a lot of incomings from FinTech companies pitching themselves as AI, and have done for many, many years. It's been a bit of a bugbear for mine, because it is, for me, it's a very vague term. As both panelists mentioned, like, form of AI, be it sort of machine learning, has been around for many, many years. And one of the first questions is, what do you mean by that? Is it machine learning? If so, what are you using? Is it regression? Are you using some sort of neural network? Are you doing natural language processing? So we've been used to the type of applications and use cases, and to be honest, we can do a lot of that analytics. We can do it ourselves in labs and others, and have been doing. And it's not always the case that more complex is better, because more complex can be harder to implement. So I think a lot of the terms do have specific meanings, and with the newer generative AI, that again has a specific meaning. But on there, I think what we are seeing is a lot of the use cases that startup companies and others tried to address with older technology or the prior generations of technology that just didn't quite work or didn't quite get close enough. Now, with the newer technology, it's getting to a point where you look and say, actually, you can solve that problem. There's still a question of, is it one where we want an external company to solve it, can we do it in-house? So all of those things are still there, but the newer generation of generative AI technology does help a lot of those use cases that were already existing, already problem stated, validated. It gives a lot more potential to solve those in some way.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think we can jump into the meat and bones of our discussions. And I think everyone is interested in how banks are catching up with the rapid demand of the user experience from the customers. Like, customers are demanding more. Like, how are you catching up with that? Jeremy, please.
Shall I start? Yeah, I think it's, the question about how are banks catching up or transforming is the main question, I suppose, is perhaps best asked in the form of how is banking doing, because I think it's doing it very differently across the sector. I think incumbent banks are definitely digitizing user experiences. They're definitely using both new models and new user experiences to improve their services. But I think particularly with AI, what we have is a whole new way of thinking about what our business model might look like. And so that has sort of three dimensions that can possibly improve our existing business model. One is efficiency. We're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing that in incumbent banks particularly, but we're seeing it very fast in new banks, the likes of Klarna, Firm, others that are applying these models to essentially take up whole reams of white-collar employment inside their companies, means that they're moving at such a fast scale, they're halving their workforce. So efficiency, the basic use case, we're definitely seeing that, but that's happening faster in newer banks. Then there's the next level, I say, of using the AI platform is to think up whole new ways of delivering the model. Think of anything that couldn't be done previously by humans efficiently across to everybody, so like private banking or, for that matter, private tuition or whatever you want to say, and now AI allows us to apply that intelligence and then do it at scale. Well, building those sort of models isn't happening inside incumbents. They're not breaking down their existing business and creating new ones or cannibalizing their businesses very quickly. Again, that's happening only really in newer startup businesses. And then there are models that we haven't seen yet, which I think is the real big opportunity, that AI will start delivering new variations, new unknown models. Those we don't know yet, but they're definitely going to come out of the startup ecosystem. They're not going to come out of the incumbent banks. So I think banking is transforming. It's using AI as that transformation, but it is not necessarily all banks that are doing so.
Okay, it's pretty good vision. And Andrew, what do you think?
Well, I think it's helpful to note that when talking about customer expectations, I mean, as consumers now, we can adopt technology in our personal lives a lot faster than certainly we can in a regulated environment, which I think is helpful because it shows everyone, internally and externally, the art of the possible. And the newer generative AI is a great example of that. Looking at it, well, if I can do this on my phone, why can't I in a corporate environment? Very good reasons for that, particularly in a regulated one. But equally, when we look at our client set, certainly for a number of unregulated or lesser regulated clients, they can also adopt some of this technology faster. So there is that, the customer expectations are certainly accelerating. And I think one of the key things as a large organisation is to have a relatively standardised way of approaching it. So with some of the new technologies, we can't have 15 different ways of applying this technology front to back. We need a standardised platform to say, of all the control, security, model explainability, information and data security, all of those elements, having one common platform that individual businesses can then use. So you're not having to review the front to back stack with every single use case, but you're sort of empowering people through the organisation. And I mean, we've been public, even for last year, we're getting tens of thousands of developers on Copilot, crowdsourcing several hundred use cases across the organisation, giving access or pilot access, and now it's going beyond that, to a couple of hundred developers. Again, so we can understand both the art of the possible from a functional perspective, but then also look actually what are the complications. So even if we can get the product working, what are all the non-functional requirements that we will need to take off internally to move this from POC to production? Because there are a lot of POCs going around with some of the new technology. Getting it from there to know what we can do, to how we actually do it robustly at scale is not straightforward.
Okay, very good.
I can expand on that by reformatting the question: how are banks failing to advance their digital transformation? I mean, having worked in a number of banks, there's lots of things that can go wrong, right? Everything starts with the best intentions. You know, yes, we're going to digitize this process or automate it. We're going to transform this software, that software, focus on the client experience. But oftentimes the problems that I've observed. So first, the sort of the unknown complexity. You know, while we know what the software does, we've played with it. As soon as you start digging below the UI layer and look at the workflows, at the logic, at various data fields and how they flow between different systems, the complexity just becomes so huge. Suddenly, you know, the transformation team or the project is stopped, and they have to step away and say, right, what are we actually doing and what can we achieve in the foreseeable timeline? And I think this is where the UX, the customer focus, becomes really important. So one of the things we've done is to really nail down the customer journeys and approach the transformation from that perspective. You know, what's the first step, what's the next, and sort of componentize the underlying software to make sure it serves the actual journey. So at the end of the day, I can't say we've transformed everything, but at least we've sort of surfaced the right things, so it creates a better digital experience. Another problem I've seen, people approach transformation or innovation from a pure technical point of view, or, you know, there's AI, there's quantum computing, there are all these amazing things, and then people again try to like stuff them into whatever software or bolt on various pieces to make something more shiny. And again, I think the business has to step back and say, right, what are we giving our customers? What is the direct benefit? And sort of play it from there rather than from the technology side. And yeah, and to add to that, I'm sure Jeremy can expand on that. It's also about people and leadership and culture, and transforming that is a big ask as well in any large organization.
That's an important point, like we discussed previously, and I think it's really important to understand, and it's coming from my experience, like usually the digital product and the software is copying the internal communication, like how the team is structured, how the business is structured, and that's kind of the framework, the limitations, and maybe like advantages for building the software. So the next question will be, how the organizational structure and the business itself affects how we're building the digital products and transforming the product. So that's a hot topic. And I know, Jeremy, you have a lot of thoughts there, so that's a word for you.
Yeah, my thoughts come from my own experience and how tough it became, I think, ultimately inside quite rigid bureaucracies, which many banks are, to develop the next generation of digital banks and digital experiences. I think that if you think of, and you just think of AI as just the third revolution that's on this path. You know, there was online, and then there was mobile, the mobile revolution, and then AI is, it's not the form factor that's changing, it's the absolute intelligence you can put into the digital experience that's changing. But it's just becoming more and more difficult, I think, to create the new types of fintechs and financial services companies that digital allows for, because of the structure, because of the management model. And I'm someone who went through that experience at Barclays, building some of the newer digital lending, digital banking businesses that we were deploying in a large organization like that, and finding it increasingly difficult because of the way the resources are managed. Technology over here, digital distribution over here, products over here, and yes, an attempt to work together across those. Whereas if you're building a fintech today, you're essentially building a scaled agile model. You're putting those resources at the hands of product managers, able to scale up at any speed. So you can either, if you want to start a new product, you spin up a team. If you want to enter a new country, you spin up a team. If you want to take 10 bets or 20 bets, like sort of blitzscaling Revolut, you just set up 20 teams and they go off and they have the technology team, they have the sort of engineers, the designers, the data scientists increasingly today, and a very light mission control that assures alignment across the organization. Mm-hmm. That enables you to then grow at a speed that is just unthinkable, I think, for big banks. In fact, big banks are mostly consolidating, reducing cost, and maintaining their models. So I think that social technology of the management model is really critical to whether we're going to see digital transformation in banking. We're definitely not going to see it necessarily across the board in banks.
Okay, thank you. Mariya?
Some of the things that helped us, yes, so Bank of New York is going through a massive reorg exercise where we're trying to be more like a fintech, believe it or not, and trying to build sort of dev teams with the usual combination of business analyst, developer, a designer that operates almost independently. Of course, nothing is ever that way in a bank, but that's the ambitious goal. And it's sort of, it's easy to say, and it makes perfect sense to everyone, right? And the first wave of this program was around organizing around functional areas. So within the bank, there are various lines of business, and every business has an onboarding team, and every business deals with payments, and every business. So consolidating these teams was the first step. And now sort of the wave 2 and 3, we're going through the rest of the organization and trying to realign things according to various platforms or functions, let's say. I think it's going pretty well. The complications again arise from funding, budgeting, right? How do you continue? And then again, banks are super organized and very controlling as to where the money goes and what gets funded and how and why. And there are all the other processes to bureaucracy, I dare say, to deal with. So it's a challenging journey. Another example I've seen where actually things work quite well is in the US, we've set up a separate legal entity that operated truly like a fintech to build a new product. So a platform providing access directly to advisors. So it was new for us, and I think the team worked really hard, and it worked because they could act almost independently. So that's and lastly, I say within the innovation, we have an investments team, and the philosophy there is to invest into our partners and into our vendors. Thereby sort of ensuring a better alignment between their product map and our product needs. So that's been working quite well as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a couple of points. I think in any large organisation, there needs to be a degree of delegation in that each business line will need some control over its own technology, and I think that's important to get ownership of and alignment with what the business priorities are. But equally, it is important to recognise where there are some themes, some topics, some capabilities that do need to be picked up and coordinated. Things like the new Gen AI wave is a good example of that. That was recognised early on, picked up directly by CEO, CTO, and said, this is important, but we need a common framework across the bank and helping empower the individual business lines. So the business lines will own the use cases, but they're not, as I said, not trying to do them all front to back. Similarly, we just announced a big partnership with Google for cloud computing. You don't want each business line coming up with their own independent cloud strategy. So that appropriate level of ownership of technology and innovation is important. And it will always be harder to innovate in a large organisation due to the organisation, the breadth and scale, and some of the legacy infrastructure. But equally, with a $12–13 billion tech budget, it's part of people's job. You should be investing in the future. And I think that's what we do see across each individual business line. So it's less a command and control of, like, you must innovate by doing X, Y, Z, but you should be spending some of your budget in an appropriate way. I think the other part, similarly with investments hat on, we do look externally. So there's a certain amount we can be doing internally, but we recognise that even with that 13 billion budget, there's a lot more innovation happening outside the bank. And it's often better, faster, cheaper because it's not being developed within the organisation. So I think being very critical of what is differentiating for us, what should we be doing, and that's not what could we do, because I know a lot of conversations with technology are, oh yeah, we can do that in-house. But with all the other priorities, is it really something we should be doing, or are there providers that we can use their service? If we particularly want a close partnership, we can invest with them. And through those relationships, we can also, it keeps our eyes open as to what is going on out there, what are the potentials, and making sure that we are harnessing that external innovation as part of our internal innovation as well. So it's that sort of flexibility of approach. There is no one size fits all in terms of technology capabilities, business ownership, use cases, and there are many companies here outside that we want to make sure that we're getting best of breed.
Okay, thank you so much. So in this case, another angle that we tackled that is customer data. And I will explain maybe a little bit more context. Like nowadays, if we take a look on the digital product and customer behavior, we have much more information that we used to have like 10, 15 years ago, because it used to be the browser, internet banking, like you were interacting with the customer. Right now, product, they literally jump into the pocket, like they all the day, 24/7 with the customer. And we know location, we know devices, we know environment as application, we know behavioral patterns, a lot of stuff. And the current vision that the data is new oil. Like as much as we know for our customer, as much we can predict and properly serve and understand our clients. So that's a challenge in terms of the collecting data, but also the challenge in terms of securing this data, because AI is crunching large numbers of different data, and then potentially it might be exposed to third parties. And another cool example, like you might find as an engineer, if you're using Copilot and you're starting to type some kind of private key for a certain service, there is a big chance that Copilot will suggest you someone else's key to access the service. And it's kind of exploiting the system for new cases and you kind of finding the information. So how the banks are working with the securing the data and making sure that in one hand, the behavior and understanding of the customer's data better, but then this information is not exposed to the cases where it should not. Like, how are we approaching the security in this case? And for you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think a couple of points to make. So I'm not a data security expert by any means, but starting with the external, so when we're looking at onboarding a new company, vendor, or even testing it, one of the key questions is, what happens to the data? Where is the flow? And anything that involves data going out of our ecosystem, much higher barrier. And our information security, cloud architecture reviews are the most onerous part of any onboarding, and rightly so. And even to that end, our innovation labs have set up certain clean room environments to allow us to test vendors without having data flows that would require a full onboarding. Like, do we use synthetic data? Do we have intermediary onboarding? So it's a problem that we have been dealing with for many years. I think on the institutional side, it's maybe a little different. We're not monitoring people's mobile phones and tracking all the information. And I think there's also some of the behaviours you may see on Amazon around, oh, you've been looking at this and we think you might like X, Y, Z. A little bit more sensitive in some of the institutional. If we have clients who are trading in particular areas and we say, oh, you've been doing this. I mean, there's an element of, we've got to respect the customer privacy as well. And it's again, not what we can do, it's what we should do, and what is enhancing the client relationship versus something that they may view as inappropriate. So I mean, the newer technologies do introduce more threats, and I remember a presentation from one of the VC companies that we often partner with, where they were going through the security landscape for generative AI models, and the number of threat vector blocks was more than certainly not seen for any other type of technology, from prompt engineering to like data source corruption. And so I think there are a lot of, and this is coming back to the difficulty of adopting some of these problems. So we're very familiar with all of the priorities, all of the things we need to do. Exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it is evolving with some of the new technologies.
Okay, thank you, Mariya.
I'll have to echo everything you said. So we're we very much do the same thing. So security is taken very seriously. We recently did a review, actually, of all the vendor sort of security issues, topics, and it turns out that our internal dev teams are fully compliant. They all come out green because security is baked in from the very start. And all of the vendors came in red or orange. And it's sort of natural because, I mean, by vendors, I mean these are usually fintechs of various sizes. And of course, as any young company knows, you want to innovate and advance quickly and then take care of the security issue. So now we're revisiting all of the relationships and sort of sharing our findings and trying to progress the tech partners in that direction. And by taking seriously, I mean, I can tell you, usually a couple of months every year spent on this topic. So developers drop everything they're doing and just focus on ensuring data quality and all the backups and everything, all the access controls and all these things. So it's taken very seriously.
Okay. The question, actually, Andrew highlighted quite an important point, like the balance between what we know about the customer and what is ethical to them. Because technology and digital product by nature is giving us an access to a lot of things. And it's kind of the balance between security, because imagine if you were kind of lost your mobile phone and then you need to re-authenticate, and somehow, I don't know, you've been using one platform and then you are switching to another one in another location with another settings might be the threat to the security. And that's kind of the balance, what we collect. And in this case, like what you do to make sure that in one hand you're making the experience and the access to the system and services well served, but another one is protected. Like that's also about the data quality and data security.
Coming from the UX background, of course, I put the customer experience first, but because I work in a very risk-averse bank, security comes first. No question about it. So it's how it is. But actually, to add to your point, I don't know if any of you are dealing with customer duty. So the overload of information, yes, it's there, but it's now becoming our responsibility to digest it and present it in a way that makes sense. So on one hand, we have to ensure that there's enough disclosure and information provided to the end consumer. At the same time, it's our obligation to make sure it's easy to understand and it doesn't give you more than you need to know, or it doesn't give you so much that you're overwhelmed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think on data and its application, particularly to the consumer, consumer duty is in the top of mind for a lot of people on this, which is, I think the threshold is actually quite low. At the moment, most banks are not using the data they already have, and I think experimentation at using alternative data is not yet proven to be more determining in terms of financial recommendations than straight financial data, i.e. cash flow, balance sheet of the individual consumer. But the opportunity is massive now because of the ability to take that outside of the closed environment of the bank current account and bank's relationship and become available as open finance. And so I think that there's it's not a big lift. We're not talking about a lot of secret data from the customer. There's permissioned access now to a lot of open finance information. That can then drive very, very different propositions. Yes, it has to be done safely, it has to follow the right protocols, ideally built with security up. But that is allowing us, I think, to redefine what it is that banking can provide or new banks can provide, because that data really makes a difference. And I think when you combine that with what we understand the recommendation should be, especially from a behavioral finance point of view, combine that with the open banking data, and then allow us to try to overcome the usual behavioral barriers that stop people from changing or exploring their banking using large language models particularly. I think we have a new form of financial AI that gives us a huge amount of opportunity. And again, that's not a big ask in terms of data access. It's not a very privileged set of data. I think we should be absolutely willing to say people like you do the following and accept that as a regulatory framework. I think, as I said, the consumer duty doesn't really ask the banks to do a lot. They could do a lot more with that data.
Okay. Since we're almost running out of the time, I would like to maybe have from each of you, what is the message that you would like to send to yourself or to the industry, in 5 years? Because the digital landscape and the technology and how we interact with the technology is pacing really fast. What do you think is important to keep in mind that you would like to communicate in 5 years from now? Let's start with you, Andrew.
I think it's agility. And this is where committing to large multi-year change programs, you've got to be ready to shift if some of the capabilities, some of the priorities shift as well. And this is back with investments hat on, very much looking at what is at the leading edge, where is it being adopted elsewhere, what should we be doing, and are we continuing down the same path? So I think it's events like this and others, and having a very tight relationship with the broader innovation ecosystem, so not just looking at internal capabilities, internal priorities, and internal development programs, but very much where are there components I can adopt. And I think the other part there is to have, as much as we can evolve, to have that sort of modular-based technology architecture helps a lot. So a lot of the platforms, be they in-house or external, 10 years ago, very monolithic, very difficult to integrate components, which meant when there is a best of breed, it may be best of breed in that little box, but it's difficult to link it up with mobile boxes. Now everything is becoming more flexible, and that's internal as well. It's easier to swap in, swap out as technology evolves, and so you can remain closer to that leading edge of innovation.
Okay, thank you. Mariya, what is the message for you?
I'd say the digital transformation is never done, so it's a process that brings us closer to a better state. But innovation is an ongoing activity. It's not something you start and finish. And the other thing I'd say, always lead from the customer experience point of view, and do your best not to introduce personal biases into this, because having worked in an organization for a long time, you think you know the business, you think you know what the clients need. Don't make that assumption that you know everything. Always do the research and always build everything around the customer workflow.
Okay, thank you. It's a pretty powerful message. And for you, Jeremy?
Yeah, and the theme that I perhaps will return to is the one thing I think that will allow digital transformation to happen more fluently inside banks is fundamentally a change of organizational model or management model. It's not organization as such, although it's often dressed up as organizational. it's a fundamental change in the way that the management is done of banking products particularly. And it's a retraining that's required to make that true. So if you want to run your business as essentially a set of problem set owners or customer owners that have all of the skills around them, be that data science, technology, design, etc. You need leaders, product managers, who understand not only credit, accounting, marketing, which they used to know, but they also understand how to develop things, how to use data science safely, how to design, etc. They need to be able to retrain into that. And then it's about splitting your organization like that. So if you look at a modern regulated bank like Klarna versus an old bank, Klarna's 5,000 people organized into 500 10-man teams. Each 10-man team is essentially a little startup building their own business. They can therefore rapidly expand. They're not using digital transformation just to reduce costs. They're doing it to actually improve the customer experience and to grow the business. So that's the one thing that will allow customers or banks to adopt more quickly to customers. It would be that management model change, that scaling agile model.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think it's quite inspiring and deep thoughts session and discussion. Thank you for sharing your vision, your challenges, and your understanding of what are the challenges in the future. Thank you so much, everyone joining us today for the first session. It was our pleasure to talk and discuss all those matters. Thank you so much.